Okay, picking up where I left off, all I did was a couple quick things in between videos. I went to File, I chose Save Scene, and I simply named our scene so that way we can shut this off and come back to it at a later time if necessary. Second thing I did is I simply dragged and dropped these two new images from an external folder. So that's it. So in the first video we have a ball that's on the screen with a default velocity and it strikes the structure. So now what we want to be able to do is we want to be able to change where the ball gets shot. And so what we're going to do is we're going to add a cannon, and then we're going to turn the ball into a prefab so it can be instantiated and shot repeatedly. So start by drag and dropping the cart and position that. Drag and drop the cannon, position that. Now I just want to point out something about the cannon. The cannon is going to rotate. By default, the center is the pivot, and that would look kind of silly for it to rotate in the dead center. You'd really expect it to rotate more towards the back. So for the cannon image, you'll notice that I changed pivot to bottom left. Now also, the cannon is in front of the cart. Probably just going to want to change that around. So ordinally determines what's on top, so you can put the cart at 5, the cannon at 4, everything else defaults to 0, so the ball will be covered by the cannon. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's take the ball, position it somewhere inside the cannon, and then just drag and drop it and put it into your asset area. It is now a prefab, and you can get rid of the red ball from the main scene. So far so good. Now we want to be able to control the cannon, we want to be able to rotate back and forth, and we want it to be able to shoot the red ball. That means it needs to be aware of this prefab and be able to instantiate it. So let's go ahead, right click, choose Create, choose C#, and we'll choose a name Cannon Control. So click on the cannon, drag and drop cannon control, and then go ahead and open it up. Now for some reason when actually this time it went away very briefly. There was an error message at the bottom, but it went away on its own. If you see it, it talks about line endings. You can just click on OK. So first we need our key codes. So public key code. We're going to do rotate left, public, key code, rotate right, public, key code, shoot ball. Oops. I think I hit page up, sorry about that. And we're going to do public transform. So transform is an object, so we're going to refer to the instantiated object. So let's just call this red ball, and just to differentiate the names we'll call it red ball object, and we'll save this and let's watch the effect it had on the cannon. So go ahead and click on the cannon and you see these appear. So the 3 key codes will use WASD controls. So A will be left, right will be D. You can use whatever keys you want. To shoot the ball will be space, and the red ball object will get put onto that. We just drag and drop it. Now, when you instantiate an object, it doesn't get instantiated just by this name. It gets instantiated by this name, and it's appended with the word clone in parentheses. So I think I'll run it once and then we will adjust it so you can see how to fix that, rather than fixing it ahead of time. That way you can see what it looks like. So we need to shoot the ball. So in the update section of cannon control, if input, because you're looking for player input, and specifically what kind of input you're looking for, get key down. The reason why it has to be down and not just get key is get key down looks for the single frame that the key is pressed down. If you do just get key, it's a rapid fire and it just looks to see that the key is active. So get key down, rotate left. And what we're going to do is we're just going to do, this isn't what the final version will be, but I want you to see how this works incrementally. So instantiate red ball, and then you have to define, so you have to do three things. You have to say what object is being instantiated, it's red ball. You have to choose its position and its rotation. In a 2D environment, rotation isn't that big of a deal, but you still do have to address it. So you can use the object's own position and rotation, which is exactly what we're going to do. You can also choose a new position, like say the cannon's moving around, well then you would need to use the position of the cannon. Maybe we'll do that in a later video too. So instantiate that object with its own position and its own rotation. And let's go ahead and save that. So what's going to happen is when I press the left rotate button, it's going to fire, which actually isn't even the way we want it. We want the space button. Actually, yeah, let's go ahead and fix that right now. Now that I think about it, why confuse matters, because the rotate left is going to be to just that, to adjust the cannon. Alright, so didn't like a symbol. Need a second one here. Oh, and I forgot the semicolon there. Okay, so when I hit shoot, it's going to fire. It should appear from here. It did. Just doesn't have much velocity going on. So, but it did work. So now let's put in the rotate left and right. So, if input dot, again get key down, and we do rotate left, and this time what we're going to do is going to actually rotate the cannon. So transform dot rotation, no, dot rotate, and then it's actually the Z axis you need to rotate, and it's a positive when you're trying to rotate to the left. And then we'll do the same thing for rotate right, and this should be a -2. So let's go ahead and save that. I'm going to press A, rotates left. I'm going to press D, rotates back right, and I do space to fire. Okay, so we can rotate the cannon, we can fire the ball, but the rotation of the cannon is not actually impacting the ball. So in addition to rotating the cannon, we also need to capture and transfer this change. So we're going to do this in kind of a manual way. We're going to create two static variables. And they're going to be floats because they're going to potentially be decimals. And it's going to be the velocity for x and the velocity for y. And what we do is we rotate left. We're going to have, actually we need to set these to variables. So we said that the current 4 and 2 just isn't cutting it. So let's make this like 9, and this is going to be, say, 6. So as you change the cannon, its angle, you're going to be changing the velocity. So if it's rotating to the left, it really shouldn't shoot as far to the left. So vel x minus equals, so we're going to reduce it by, say, 0.8. However, it's going to shoot higher up because it's pointing higher in the sky. So vel y should actually be increased. And based on tested in the past, these numbers probably shouldn't match. So let's do like 1.2, and since we're using decimals, these both need to be f. And a lot of this is trial and error since it's being done manually. And since we want to be consistent, we want to use the same variables when we're rotating to the right, but it needs to be plus 0.8 rather than minus, and this needs to be minus 1.2. So great, we created two variables. The variables get changed when the cannon is rotated. Now we just have to transfer that into the ball, and then actually we're pretty much done with the video at this point. So the ball already has this statement that we had at the very beginning. So all we have to do is just replace these constants with the new variables. Now since the static variables, we have to say where the variable is coming from. So it's the script cannon control, and then it's velocity x, and again script cannon control, velocity y. And then let's save this. So first we're going to shoot it without making any rotation. That's almost right, but not quite. So let's give it the starting value a little bit more oomph. Let's make that 10. And let's make that 8. And again, this doesn't have to be exact. This is really just for demonstrative purposes. You can fine tune it all you want. So we're going to shoot. Right. We'll tweak it one more time and then we'll proceed. Because we want to be able to actually reach our target. Okay. Now see how they did not get damaged? That's what I was talking about how this object's name is changed. See how it says red ball clone? So it doesn't just instantiate by this name, it appends the word clone. So that makes this statement never happen because a collision with red ball never occurs. A collision with red ball clone occurs. So you can either drop the word clone in here, or you can put a statement in here. So let's just do that now. Let's do game object dot name equals. Of the two, this is probably the cleaner way to do it, because even though you only have one statement, in a real complex game you might be checking 20, 30, 50 different locations, so it's easier just to do a single line when the object gets instantiated. So let's do that now, and the damage should work again. There we go, perfect. Now, and see how this kind of rolls around? I don't know if I mentioned at the beginning of the video, you may have to tweak the linear drag. So for the ball itself, even though it's a prefab, you can make changes. You might want to change this to linear drag. It defaults to 0, so you might have to tweak it a little bit so it doesn't roll around too much. Okay, so now let's look at our when we rotate the cannon. So we're going to rotate this 4 times and then shoot. And you can see it did make a difference. It really doesn't go, it seems to land in about the same place as far as where it lands vertically. Now, by the way, you don't have to keep restarting it like I did, but I really want to see where it hits the structure. Yeah, definitely need to work on that. But now you see that it's working, though. It's just a matter of tweaking to get exactly the control the way you want it to look. So, And make sure if you make a change in one direction, you really need to make it in the other as well, or else the more you move left and right, it won't consistently adjust. See, now that, not a lot, but it did go further. And now we rotate it the other direction. Yeah, see, that's a little bit too low that way. But I think we'll stop there, because at this point, it really is, like I said, just balancing at this point. So you get the idea that as you rotate as you're rotating the cannon, then you need to alter the velocity based on that. There might be a more direct way of translating this rotation into a velocity change, but I think that works out pretty good. I mean, maybe it would just be an even 2, but offhand it doesn't look like that would quite do it. So and probably right now we're doing it in a linear manner. If you're doing the actual math, a change at the lower end probably would be very different than a change at the upper end here. Because if you're going from a near perpendicular position, you're not really changing the y velocity. So, like I said, this is really kind of a manual approach. So what you would have to do is you'd probably actually have to scale this, that you would have to check for the angle of the rotation, and then at a certain point, rather than being 0.8 and 1.5, it would be a smaller reduction and a smaller reduction in both directions. But that should just about do it. You now have the ability to fire a cannonball. You can aim it once you tweak it a little bit more, and you can destroy the structure. So I think that's just about it for now. And just do this one more time from its default. Yeah, so its default numbers are a little bit off. Okay. Alright, that should do it. If you have any more questions, just let me know. I might do one more video where we move the cannon. Usually you don't have that in this type of game, but it certainly would give us some additional expansion on the functionality.